It is uncommon in a magazine lifetime how one gets to sit a few fathom of a CEO as he announces his retire and later, during the identical 24 several hours, stay in the present of his heir as he is sworn in. More than so while it happens out of a shooting creature fired or extensive crowds take to the gateway. But Southward Africa has ever been a nationality to surprise party. And to enrage. And to instill. It is love no some nation I include always informed of. Of my at first experiences in the apartheid 1980s to the growth of CEO Cyril Ramaphosa, it has often havered among the opportunity of calamity and triumphant, occasionally courteous both of possibilities during the area of a solitary date. The drop of Jacob Zuma came on, in portion, since of few unequivocally Southward African dynamic. It would never include happened out of a powerful basic law. The paper was counterfeit in thoroughness in the previous to medium 1990s and is profiled by the ram of apartheid's cruel riot and the dictatorships that had inflicted such a poverty in another place on the African mainland. But the protections it enshrines, of complementary speaking, more democratic accountable, and freelance judicial, are as well reflections of a domestic feature, which I would enterprise to urge a expiatory fractiousness. Southward Africans loving to claim. And they include the souvenir of creature capable to laughter at themselves and their leaders. In the moribund days of the Zuma by the government down there was a characteristically Southward African turmoil of drama rumors. Zuma might announce a country of disaster and use the troop to stampede his opponents. Memories of PW bots and the apartheid disaster of 1986 yet torment an older general. Later came a history how offered Mr. Ramaphosa was negotiations a transactions how might see Mr. Zuma taking into account immune of proceedings if he rotated country eyewitness in main corrupt practices concoction. Both of were rapidly debunked. The Southward African War will never be permitted to hold the area in domestic lifetime how it did in the securocrat apartheid country. Though Mr. Zuma's largest hot supporters can recall which happens while you put too lot force in the hands of the soldiers. As for immune, it was ever a meaningless rumor. The new distribution had no intent of start in a threadbare transactions how would, in any instance, include been quickly affected downward by the courts. So how is CEO Ramaphosa potential to manage? The man I include observable above almost 30 year is potential to go rapidly to bring the impact of the various safety and intellect departments. The will be a by the government led by a citizen trained in the trading unions and civilian community who never thick felt convenient in the secret civilization of several beginnings how refundable of expulsion in the ANC above coffee the night following CEO Ramaphosa's country of the nation speaking, my fellow Andrew Harding, who lived by a two regulation of Mr. Zuma, summarized up the changing, though will be a CEO chairmanship. Exactly. Civilian service staff are already nervously wonder on his plans for reducing bloated by the government departments. Down there will be a war on by the government waste management, and visits to by the government departments through the nation, perhaps undeclared. But in a time of expect several cautious is necessary. Fair as in the days following apartheid the social reasoning was imbued in whites political community pretending they had never very backed apartheid, we can now wait lot who thrived by CEO Zuma to announce themselves to include been hot enemies of corrupt practices all on. Mr. Zuma was certainly the shill by whom so lot corruption flourished. But the rot rest profound in the governing side. The new CEO will go thoroughly, as ever, but we can wait to see a stable room out of such related in the old mode. Several of them may drop since they discover themselves involved in penal transactions. Other will be common cold-shouldered and outmaneuvered. Will the break Africa's senior release motion? I don't trust so. In elections looming following year the side will drag along, recognition how Mr. Ramaphosa giving the top expect of win. For the side, Southward African community is inviting for a calculation on corrupt practices. Down there were crooks at lot levels of community who tip it of country coffers, and lot had links to the ANC. The true committee that accompanied apartheid saw the beneficiaries of apartheid go on a lifetime of benefit lot as they had made up. I feeling southward Africans do not desire to see a such curtain painted above corrupt practices. Down there will be a country sees investigation to exceed the some social processes that are forensically gasket out the atrocity of the Zuma year. And down there will be testing of such charged of misuse their force. Jacob Zuma could be amongst such in trial. Africa is exposed deep policy changes. But one cannot levy a solitary pattern and neglect the facility factors at job in various regions. In the recent few months I observed the ramifications of elections in Kenya and Liberia, and the remove of unloved leaders in Zimbabwe and Southward Africa. In every location the dynamic were various. Zimbabwe happened since the position Robert Mugabe and his woman elegance aloof the safety elitists how had propped up their disastrous mode for so length. In Liberia, the success transfer of one democratically selected lead to else, for the at first period in the nationalities story, came on in the background of a widening of democratic state through lot of Western Africa. In Center and East Africa authoritarian is the dominating strength, for currently. But the peace remove of Jacob Zuma, led by the institutions of a lively democratic state, will instill activists in Kinshasa, Kigali, Kampala, Nairobi and multiple some points through the mainland. Of the days while corrupt practices and mismanagement endangered to do Southward Africa a amusing stockpile, down there is a opportunity to rectify several ethical management on the mainland.